Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
My wife had an affair bill and planned to take my everything. What happened next destroyed them both. What started as a perfect 25-year marriage in Toledo, Ohio, unraveled when Adrian Miller discovered his wife Sandra's weekend real estate conferences were actually secret rendezvous with his brother-in-law Victor at luxury hotels. But the betrayal went deeper than just an affair. They had recorded conversations planning to falsely accuse him of abuse, take his assets, and turn his daughter against him. Armed with 3 months of evidence, including photos, recordings, and their own mocking messages calling him a stupid grease monkey, Adrian chose the most devastating moment for revenge. Victor's promotion celebration at the Grandeur Hotel, where he exposed everything to their entire social circle. This is the story of how one man transformed from a trusting husband into a calculated architect of justice, ultimately finding redemption and true love on the other side of betrayal. Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. The spring morning in Toledo painted everything in shades of gold and promise. Adrian Miller stood at the kitchen window, coffee mug warming his calloused hands, watching Sandra move through their morning routine with the grace of a dancer. 25 years of marriage, and she still made his heart skip when she laughed at something on the morning news. "Honey, did you check the oil in the Mustang?" Sandra called over her shoulder, cracking eggs into a sizzling pan. The scent of bacon already filled their suburban home, mixing with the fresh coffee and her lavender perfume. "Every Sunday like clockwork," Adrian replied, unable to suppress his grin. "She purrs like the day I bought her." The '68 Mustang GT Fastback sat in their garage like a sleeping beast, midnight blue paint gleaming under fluorescent lights. Adrian had bought it as a restoration project 15 years ago, back when money was tighter but dreams were just as big. Now it was his pride and joy, meticulously maintained, every chrome detail polished to perfection. Sandra appeared behind him, sliding her arms around his waist. "You and that car," she murmured against his shoulder. "Sometimes I think you love her more than me." Adrian turned in her embrace, looking down at the woman who'd been his anchor through decades of shift work and overtime. Her blonde hair caught the morning light, and those green eyes still sparkled with the same fire that had captured him at 27. "Never," he said, meaning it with every fiber of his being. "She's just my mistress. You're my heart." Sandra's laugh bubbled up, rich and genuine. "Smooth talker? Now come eat before everything gets cold." They settled at the breakfast table, the same oak piece they'd bought at a garage sale their first year married. Adrian watched Sandra butter her toast, noting the elegant manicure, the designer watched small luxuries she'd earned through years of hustling in real estate. He remembered those early days vividly. Him pulling double shifts at Midwest Precision, coming home covered in machine oil and exhaustion. Sandra studying for her real estate license at this very table, highlighter in hand, determination etched on her face. "Remember when you failed the exam the first time?" Adrian asked suddenly. Sandra's eyes softened. "You drove me back to the testing center the very next week. Waited in the parking lot for 3 hours. Best 3 hours I ever spent. You came out crying happy tears. And you had champagne in a cooler in the trunk," Sandra finished, reaching across to squeeze his hand. "Cheap stuff from the gas station." "It tasted like victory," Adrian said. The memory hung between them, sweet and substantial. Those had been leaner times, but somehow richer too. When Sandra's first big commission came through a lakefront property that nobody thought she could sell, they'd celebrated with a weekend trip to Cedar Point, screaming on roller coasters like teenagers. Then Caitlin arrived, and their world shifted on its axis. Adrian could still feel the weight of his daughter in his arms that first night, tiny and perfect in theirs. Sandra had been fierce in labor, refusing the epidural, gripping his hand hard enough to leave bruises. When the nurse placed their daughter on Sandra's chest, both parents wept without shame. "Speaking of our baby girl," Sandra said, as if reading his thoughts, "she called last night while you were in the garage. Says her constitutional law professor thinks she has real potential for litigation." Pride swelled in Adrian's chest. Of course she does. She gets that from you, the ability to argue anybody into anything. And your stubbornness, Sandra countered. Remember when she was 16 and wanted to restore that old Honda with you? Spent every weekend for 6 months in that garage. Adrian chuckled. Grease under her fingernails, but she wouldn't quit until it ran. The kitchen filled with comfortable silence, just the clink of silverware and the distant hum of suburban life waking up. Through the window, Adrian could see Frank Kowalski next door, already tending to his immaculate lawn. The retired cop had been their neighbor for 15 years, a steady presence who noticed everything and said just enough. "Oh," Sandra said, pulling out her phone, "I forgot to mention. I've got another regional conference this weekend, Columbus this time." Adrian nodded automatically. Sandra's success in real estate meant constant networking, seminars, certification courses. Elite Properties hadn't become the premier luxury real estate firm in Northwest Ohio by accident, and Sandra was their top performer. "That's the third this month," he observed mildly. "I know, honey, but Richardson is bringing in some major players from Chicago. Could mean huge opportunities for us." She stood, carrying dishes to the sink. "Besides, Victor will be there. He promised to introduce me to some hotel investors looking for residential properties." Victor. Adrian's brother-in-law had a golden touch when it came to business connections. As regional sales director for Grandeur Hotels, Victor Blackwood moved in circles Adrian could barely imagine. Country clubs, wine tastings, charity galas, a world of careful smiles and calculated handshakes. "That's good of him," Adrian said, though something flickered in his chest, a feeling without name or shape. Sandra's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, a quick smile crossing her face before she tucked it away. "Just confirming dinner plans with Linda for next week. I promised to help her redecorate the guest room." Adrian finished his coffee, studying his wife as she moved efficiently around their kitchen. When had she started wearing her perfume so strong? The lavender was gone, replaced by something muskier, more complex. Sophisticated, she'd called it when he'd asked. Better for client meetings. Later in the garage, Adrian ran his hands over the Mustang's hood, feeling the familiar calm that came with routine maintenance. The engine was a thing of beauty, rebuilt with his own hands, every gasket and belt exactly where it should be. Unlike life, cars made sense. They followed rules. When something was wrong, there were signs, knocks, leaks, warning lights. He thought about Sandra's conference schedule, mentally mapping the cities: Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, a triangle around their life in Toledo. She always came back energized, full of stories about workshops and networking victories. Her phone would buzz constantly those weekends, and she'd laugh, apologizing for being so popular. The wrench slipped in his hand, nicking his knuckle. Adrian cursed softly, sucking the small wound. Focus. He needed to focus. That evening, they grilled steaks on the patio, Linda and Victor joining them as they did most Sundays. Victor commanded attention as always, tall and lean with silver touches at his temples that somehow made him more distinguished. He wore casual clothes like armor, everything perfectly fitted, deliberately chosen. "Adrian, my man," Victor boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. "How's the most reliable engineer in Toledo?" "Can't complain," Adrian replied, flipping steaks. "How's the hotel business?" "Booming. Just locked in a contract for 3 new properties in Michigan." Victor accepted a beer, his wedding ring catching the light. "Sandra tells me you're still nursing that old Mustang." "She runs better than cars half her age," Adrian defended. Victor laughed, rich and confident. "That's what I love about you, Adrian. Loyal to a fault." Across the patio, Sandra and Linda huddled over a tablet, looking at furniture. The sisters-in-law had grown close over the years, shopping trips and spa days cementing their bond. Linda lived in Victor's shadow, content to manage their showpiece home while he conquered the business world. "These regional conferences," Victor said, lowering his voice Mantuman, "they're gold mines for connections. Sandra's smart to hit them all." "She works hard," Adrian agreed. "Success requires sacrifice," Victor said, those sharp blue eyes unreadable. "But the rewards." He gestured broadly at their prosperity, the implication clear. During dinner, Adrian found himself watching the interplay of glances and gestures. How Victor's hand lingered on Sandra's shoulder when he complimented her potato salad. How Sandra laughed a beat too long at his stories. How they seemed to share some private frequency, tuned to signals Adrian couldn't quite catch. "More wine?" Sandra offered, already pouring into Victor's glass. Their fingers brushed in the exchange. Natural, innocent, family. "Adrian's been restoring the carburetor," Sandra said, deflecting attention. "You should see him out there, like a surgeon." "A grease-covered surgeon," Linda laughed. "Victor won't even change his own oil." "Why would I when professionals exist?" Victor countered smoothly. "I focus on my strengths." The conversation flowed on, but Adrian felt displaced, like watching his life through frosted glass. When had these hairline fractures appeared in his perfect world? Or had they always been there, too fine to see? That night, as Sandra got ready for bed, Adrian noticed her new nightgown. Silk, deep red, nothing like the comfortable cotton she usually wore. "Special occasion?" he asked from his side of the bed. She glanced over, distracted. "What? Oh, just felt like something different. You don't like it?" "You look beautiful," he said truthfully. Sandra smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thanks, honey. Long day tomorrow. Got that Pemberton estate listing to finalize." She slipped under the covers, pecking his cheek before turning away. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into sleep. Adrian lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy rotation. In the darkness, questions circled like moths around a flame. The conferences, the perfume, the brush of fingers over wine, each thing explainable, innocent in isolation. Together they formed a pattern he couldn't quite grasp, a puzzle with pieces that didn't want to fit. But this was Sandra. His Sandra. The woman who'd held his hand through his father's death, who'd cheered herself hoarse at Caitlin's graduations, who still made his coffee exactly right after 25 years. Adrian forced his eyes closed, willing sleep to come. In the garage below, his Mustang sat silent, waiting for the next Sunday's attention. Reliable. Predictable. Unlike the shifting sands he suddenly felt beneath his feet. Tomorrow would be better, he told himself. Tomorrow the morning light would chase away these shadows, and his life would make sense again. But somewhere deep in his chest, in the place where instinct lived below conscious thought, Adrian Miller knew that tomorrow would bring no relief. The perfect facade was beginning to crack, and once started, such things rarely stopped until the whole structure came tumbling down. The credit card statement arrived on a Tuesday, mixed in with the usual pile of bills and advertisements. Adrian almost missed it. Would have missed it if Sandra hadn't been at another evening showing. He'd come home to an empty house, the silence pressing against his ears as he sorted mail at the kitchen counter. Midwest Precision had been brutal that day. A bearing failure in the main assembly line had cost them 6 hours of production. Adrian's team had worked like demons to get everything running again, but the stress showed in his aching shoulders and the throb behind his eyes. The statement fell open as he reached for it, pages fanning across the granite Sandra had insisted they needed 2 years ago. His eyes caught the transaction list, scanning automatically for anomalies, an engineer's habit that served him well in all aspects of life. There. Third page, the Refectory Columbus. $347.83. Adrian knew the restaurant, had taken Sandra there for their 20th anniversary. White tablecloths, French cuisine, the kind of place where water came in 3 varieties, and the wine list required its own table. But the date. He checked his phone calendar. That Friday, Sandra had been at a conference in Cleveland. He remembered because she'd called that night, talking about a breakthrough session on digital marketing strategies. She'd sounded tired but excited, already planning how to implement what she'd learned. The kitchen suddenly felt too warm. Adrian loosened his collar, staring at the damning numbers. Maybe she'd mixed up the cities, easy to do with so many trips. Or perhaps the conference had been rescheduled. There were explanations, reasonable explanations. His phone buzzed a text from Sandra. "Running late, honey. Showing went long, but I think we got them. Don't wait up. Love you." Adrian set the phone down carefully, his hands steady despite the tremor in his chest. He folded the statement, tucked it back in its envelope, He'd ask her about it tomorrow, casually. No accusations, just clarification. But tomorrow stretched into 3 days before the opportunity arose. Sandra whirlwinded through their lives, closing deals, scheduling meetings, her energy crackling like electricity. Adrian waited, the question burning his tongue until Friday morning when she lingered over breakfast. "Hey," he said, proud of how normal his voice sounded. "I was doing the bills and noticed something odd. The refectory showed up on our statement, but I thought you were in Cleveland that weekend." Sandra's coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. For just a moment, a heartbeat, a breath, her face went completely still. Then animation flowed back like water breaking through a dam. "Oh my God, yes! I totally forgot to mention it. That was Victor's client dinner. You know how he's always connecting me with hotel investors? Well, this couple from Denver was in town, and he thought I'd be perfect for their second home search." She set the mug down, leaning forward conspiratorially. "Adrian, they're looking at properties over $2 million. The commission alone would pay for Caitlin's law school." "But Cleveland?" Adrian pressed gently. Sandra laughed, the sound bright as breaking glass. I know. I was supposed to be in Cleveland, but the Saturday session got canceled. Some issue with the keynote speaker. Victor called last minute about this dinner, and I couldn't pass it up." She rounded the counter, sliding her arms around his neck. "I should have told you. I'm sorry, honey. It's just been so crazy lately." Her perfume enveloped him, that new scent that made him think of dark flowers and smoke. Adrian felt her lips brush his jaw, her body warm against his. "Victor said he'd expense it through his company account, but you know how scattered he can be. I'll remind him to cut us a check." Another kiss, this one on his mouth, soft and apologetic. "Forgive me?" What could he say? The explanation made sense. Victor was scattered about personal finances, brilliant with business but careless with receipts, and the opportunity. Sandra was right. A commission like that would mean security, peace of mind. "Of course," Adrian murmured against her hair. "Just surprised me is all." Sandra pulled back, studying his face with those green eyes that had seen him through every triumph and failure of their adult lives. "You trust me, don't you?" "With my life," he answered automatically, meaning it. Her smile bloomed, genuine and warm. "Good, because I've got another conference next weekend. Cincinnati this time. But I promise, no surprise dinners." She was gone in a whirl of briefcase and car keys, leaving Adrian alone with the morning news and a cold piece of toast. He sat at their oak table, replaying the conversation. Every word had been right, every gesture familiar. So why did his chest feel hollow, like something essential had been scooped out? At work, Adrian threw himself into the repetitive precision of quality control. Measurements and tolerances, specifications and standards here was a world that made sense. Metal didn't lie. Machines didn't dissemble. A part was either within tolerance or it wasn't. "You okay, boss?" Courtney Mitchell appeared at his shoulder, her safety glasses pushed up into graying hair. "You've checked that same batch 3 times. Adrian blinked, realizing she was right. The calipers in his hand showed the same measurement he'd already recorded twice. "Just thorough," he said. Courtney's brown eyes narrowed slightly. They'd worked together for 15 years, long enough to read each other's moods like weather patterns. "Uh-huh. Come on, coffee break." They sat in the break room, weak coffee in paper cups, the familiar industrial hum surrounding them. Courtney waited, patient as always. She'd been going through her own divorce 3 years ago, had shown up to work with red eyes and fierce determination to never let it affect her performance. "Sandra's been traveling a lot," Adrian finally said. "The real estate thing?" "Conferences, networking. It's good for business." Courtney nodded slowly. "But—" Adrian spun his cup, watching the coffee swirl. "Nothing, just nothing. Adrian Miller, you are the worst liar I've ever met." Courtney leaned back, crossing her arms. "Talk to me." So he did. The credit card, the explanation, the perfect, reasonable explanation that somehow sat wrong in his gut. Courtney listened without interrupting, her expression carefully neutral. "Could be nothing," she said when he finished. "Probably is nothing. But your instincts are good. Always have been. Remember when you knew the Henderson delivery was off before we even opened the crates? That was different. That was work. Same principle. Courtney stood, crushing her cup. Look, I'm not saying anything's wrong, but if your gut's talking, maybe listen. Just carefully. That evening, Adrian found himself in the garage earlier than usual, the Mustang's hood up, his hands deep in her mechanical heart. Frank Kowalski wandered over, beer in hand, settling onto the folding chair Adrian kept for such visits. Beautiful evening, Frank observed. That it is. They sat in companionable silence, the suburban sounds of lawnmowers and playing children drifting through the open garage door. Frank had been a detective for 30 years before retirement, had seen humanity at its worst, and somehow maintained his easy smile. Sandra's car's gone a lot lately, Frank mentioned casually. Adrian's wrench stilled. Real estate's booming. Good for her, good for you both. Frank sipped his beer. Linda mentioned they're planning a big party for Victor's promotion, regional vice president or some such. He's worked hard for it. That he has. Another sip. Interesting man, your brother-in-law. Very focused. Adrian straightened, wiping his hands on a shop rag. What's that supposed to mean? Frank raised a placating hand. Nothing bad, just observant. Man like that, climbing the ladder probably doesn't leave much to chance. He's been good to our family, Adrian said, hearing the defensive note in his own voice. I'm sure he has. Frank stood, finishing his beer. Just remember, Adrian, when things look too good to be true. He didn't finish the cliché, just patted Adrian's shoulder and ambled back to his own yard. That night, Sandra's phone buzzed during dinner. She glanced at it, a quick smile flashing across her face before she tucked it away. Sorry, she said. Client follow-up. This late? You know how it is. Luxury real estate doesn't follow business hours. She speared a piece of salmon, chewing thoughtfully. Actually, that reminds me. Victor texted earlier about that Cincinnati conference. He'll be there too, some grandeur regional meeting. He offered to drive down together, save on gas. Adrian's fork paused midway to his mouth. That's convenient, isn't it? We can catch up, plan Mom's birthday party. Sandra's phone buzzed again. This time she didn't look. Probably go over some referrals too. He's been so generous with connections. Very generous, Adrian agreed, the salmon turning to cardboard in his mouth. They finished dinner discussing mundane things: the neighbor's new fence, Caitlin's upcoming exams, whether to replant the front garden. Normal married conversation, worn smooth by repetition. But Adrian found himself watching Sandra's face, looking for what? Tells? Signs? After she went to bed, Adrian sat in his study, laptop open to their online banking. The browser history showed Sandra had been on earlier, checking something. He scrolled through recent transactions, not sure what he was looking for until he found it. Cash withdrawals. 300 here, 500 there, always on Fridays before her weekend trips. Nothing alarming individually. Sandra often dealt in cash for staging expenses, tips for vendors. But the pattern. Adrian closed the laptop, his head pounding. He was being paranoid. This was what 25 years of marriage looked like. Trust. Sandra had never given him reason to doubt, had stood by him through layoffs and family deaths and 1,000 small disappointments. But the refectory receipt burned in his mind. Her face, that moment of stillness before the explanation poured out. Victor's generous connections, the new perfume, the silk nightgown, the phone that buzzed with increasing frequency. Stop it, he commanded himself. This is Sandra, your Sandra. He climbed the stairs to their bedroom, pausing in the doorway. His wife lay curled on her side, blonde hair spilled across the pillow. In sleep, she looked younger. The real estate shark persona dissolved into the girl he'd married in a courthouse ceremony they couldn't afford to make bigger. Adrian slipped into bed, careful not to wake her. Tomorrow, he'd put these poisonous thoughts aside. Tomorrow, he'd remember what mattered: their life together, their daughter, their accomplishments built on mutual trust and shared dreams. But as sleep finally took him, One last thought flickered through his consciousness like a warning light on a dashboard. Sometimes the most catastrophic failures began with the smallest cracks, hairline fractures invisible until the whole structure gave way. And sometimes, by the time you noticed the warning signs, it was already too late. Adrian Miller became someone he didn't recognize. The transformation happened gradually, then all at once, like metal fatigue finally giving way under pressure. The man who'd always taken pride in straightforward honesty now found himself living a double life, smiling at breakfast while documenting betrayal. The decision crystallized on a Wednesday afternoon. He'd been replacing a gasket on the Mustang when Sandra's phone rang in the kitchen, the sound carrying through the open garage door. She must have been in the shower. Without thinking, Adrian wiped his hands and went to silence it. The screen showed a text notification. "Can't wait for Friday. Miss you already. V. Victor." Adrian stared at the message until the screen went dark. His hands didn't shake. His breathing remained steady, but something fundamental shifted in his chest, like tectonic plates realigning. The benefit of the doubt, that generous interpretation he'd been clinging to, evaporated like motor oil on hot asphalt. He heard the shower shut off upstairs. Moving with purpose, Adrian returned to the garage, picked up his wrench, and went back to work. When Sandra appeared 20 minutes later, hair wrapped in a towel, he was elbow-deep in the engine. "Someone called?" she asked. "Didn't hear anything," Adrian replied without looking up. She kissed his cheek, a brief brush of lips. "I'll be late tonight, showing that colonial on Maple Street. Good luck with it." After her car pulled away, Adrian sat in his garage, staring at his grease-stained hands. In 25 years of marriage, he'd never lied to his wife. Now the falsehood had come as easily as breathing. That evening, he met Courtney at a bar downtown, far from their usual haunts. She took one look at his face and ordered 2 whiskeys without asking. "Talk," she commanded. Adrian told her about the text, about the pattern emerging from scattered pieces. Courtney listened, her engineer's mind already categorizing, analyzing. "You need proof," she said finally. "Real proof, not just suspicions. Otherwise, she'll gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. I'm not hiring a private investigator. Don't need to. You've got technology." Courtney pulled out her phone. "Family sharing plan?" Adrian nodded. "Location services. Check where her phone actually goes versus where she says she'll be." She showed him how to access the feature. Just be prepared for what you might find. That night, Adrian lay beside Sandra, listening to her breathe. She'd come home at 9, chattering about the showing, how the buyers loved the original hardwood floors. Her phone sat charging on her nightstand, password protected, holding secrets he couldn't access. But he didn't need her phone. He had their shared account. Thursday crawled by. Adrian went through the motions at work, but his mind was elsewhere, planning. Sandra had another conference starting Friday Columbus again. She'd leave after lunch, return Sunday evening. Victor had mentioned having meetings there too. What a coincidence. Friday morning arrived gray and humid, storm clouds building to the west. Sandra packed with her usual efficiency, rolling dresses that wouldn't wrinkle, tucking toiletries into designer bags. "Weather looks nasty," Adrian observed, sipping coffee. "I'll drive careful." She zipped her suitcase, then crossed to kiss him goodbye. "Love you, honey. Hold down the fort." "Always do." Adrian watched from the window as her Lexus backed out of the driveway. Then he moved. He'd already arranged the day off, citing a doctor's appointment. His overnight bag waited in the truck. The conference hotel information sat in his GPS. But first, he had preparations to make. At Best Buy, Adrian purchased a camera with a telephoto lens, paying cash. The sales kid tried to upsell him on accessories, but Adrian just wanted something that could capture clear images from a distance. Next stop, a rental car agency where he picked up a generic silver sedan, invisible as air. By 2 o'clock, he was parked across from the Columbus Marriott where the real estate conference was supposedly taking place. He'd verified it online. The conference was real, scheduled, legitimate. Whether Sandra would actually attend was another question. Her Lexus appeared at 2:47, sliding into the valet lane. Adrian watched through the camera as she emerged, wearing the black dress that hugged her curves, the one she saved for special occasions. She handed her keys to the valet but didn't head for the lobby. Instead, she stood on the sidewalk, checking her phone. A familiar BMW pulled up 5 minutes later. Victor stepped out, all easy confidence and expensive shoes. The hug lasted too long, his hand settling on the small of her back with practiced intimacy. They didn't enter the Marriott. Instead, they walked 2 blocks to Le Méridien, Sandra's heels clicking on concrete, Victor's hand never leaving her back. Adrian followed on foot, baseball cap pulled low, camera tucked in a messenger bag. His heart hammered, but his hands stayed steady. 20 years of precision work had taught him control. The Le Méridien lobby was all marble and modern art. Adrian positioned himself behind a newspaper in the bar area, watching them check in. No conference registration, no networking badges, just Victor sliding a credit card across the desk while Sandra stood close enough to share his shadow. Room 1247. Adrian heard the desk clerk mention it while handing over key cards. The elevator swallowed them, and Adrian was left staring at brushed steel doors, his wedding ring suddenly feeling like a shackle. He didn't need to see more, didn't want to see more, but the engineer in him demanded complete documentation. He found a chair near the elevators, pulled out his phone, and pretended to work emails while watching. They emerged 2 hours later. Sandra's hair was different, hastily pinned. Her lipstick had been reapplied but slightly smudged at the corner. Victor's tie was loosened, his usual sharp grooming slightly disheveled. They walked out separately, Sandra first, then Victor 5 minutes later. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Sandra. "Conference is great. Learning so much. Missing you." He stared at the words until they blurred. His thumbs moved without conscious thought. "Missing you, too. Drive safe in the storm." Because he could see through the lobby windows that the storms had arrived, rain lashing the streets. Sandra would be driving back to the Marriott in this weather, maintaining her alibi, while Adrian sat in a hotel bar with photographic evidence that his marriage was a lie. He ordered a whiskey, then another. The bartender, a young woman with kind eyes, didn't comment on the wedding ring or the way his hands shook now that he'd stopped moving. "Rough day?" she asked finally. You could say that. Adrian drank until the edges softened, but not enough to impair his driving. Then he walked back into the rain, letting it soak through his jacket, washing away the cologne and perfume smell of the hotel. The drive home took place in a strange bubble of calm. Lightning split the sky, thunder rattling the rental car's windows, but Adrian felt removed from it all. He'd crossed a line. There was no going back to unknowing. At home, he uploaded the photos to a cloud account, then hid the camera in his toolbox. The rental car went back the next morning. By the time Sandra returned Sunday evening, full of conference enthusiasm and new business strategies, Adrian had reassembled his mask perfectly. "How was your weekend?" she asked, unpacking. "Quiet. Got a lot done on the car." "You and that Mustang?" she laughed, but it sounded different now. Everything sounded different. Adrian watched her move around their bedroom, hanging up clothes, checking her phone, always checking her phone. How many times had she done this? How many conferences had been cover stories? How long had Victor's hands been touching what Adrian had thought was his alone? "Oh," Sandra said, turning from the closet. "Victor mentioned he ran into you downtown last week?" Adrian's blood chilled, but his expression stayed neutral. "Must be mistaken. Haven't been downtown in months." She studied him for a moment, something flickering in those green eyes. Then she shrugged. "Must have been someone who looked like you. He said the guy was getting into some rental car. Wasn't me," Adrian said easily. The lie tasted like copper. That night Sandra curled against him in bed, her warmth familiar yet alien. "Love you," she murmured against his shoulder. "Love you too," Adrian replied, staring into the darkness. But love had become past tense, murdered in a hotel lobby while storm clouds gathered. What remained was something harder, colder, a determination that crystallized with each breath Sandra took beside him. She'd made her choice. Now Adrian would make his. The next morning he called Evan Davies. 3 months. That's how long Adrian Miller lived as two different people. By day he was the devoted husband, the reliable engineer, the man who grilled on Sundays and kept his lawn pristine. By night, he was the architect of destruction, methodically building a case that would shatter lives like safety glass. Evan Davies operated from a corner office overlooking the Maumee River, all leather and dark wood and barely contained aggression. He'd listen to Adrian's story with the detachment of a surgeon examining a tumor, occasionally nodding, taking notes in sharp, angular handwriting. "You have good evidence," he'd said, reviewing the photos, the location histories, the credit card records Adrian had meticulously compiled. "But we need more. Ohio's a no-fault state, but proving adultery can affect asset division. And this." He'd tapped the printed text messages Adrian had managed to photograph. "This suggests financial planning, conspiracy. What do you need? Audio would be ideal. Admission of the affair, discussion of assets, something that shows clear intent to defraud you." Evan's smile had been sharp as a blade. "Leave that to me, I know people." Adrian hadn't asked what people. He'd simply nodded, written a check for the retainer, and gone back to pretending his world wasn't imploding. Now, 3 months later, he stood in his garage on a Thursday evening, October wind rattling the door, polishing chrome that already gleamed. Tomorrow night would be Victor's coronation, the promotion to regional vice president he'd been chasing for years. A celebration at the Grandeur Toledo, 500 guests, everyone who mattered in their intersecting worlds. Adrian had watched the planning unfold with morbid fascination. Sandra and Linda coordinating centerpieces, Victor preening like a peacock, everyone focused on creating the perfect evening. They had no idea what Adrian had planned for the perfect moment. His phone buzzed. Evan. "We got it," the lawyer said without preamble. "My audio guy came through. Clear conversation. Both parties identifiable. Adrian. It's worse than we thought." Adrian's hand tightened on the chamois. "How much worse?" "They're not just planning to divorce you. They're setting you up. Victor's been documenting incidents of emotional abuse, building a case. Sandra's been moving money, small amounts, nothing traceable. They want to paint you as unstable, take everything." The garage spun slightly. Adrian gripped the Mustang's hood, metal cool under his palms. "When?" "Based on what we heard, soon after his promotion is official. They want his new salary locked in first for support calculations. Send me the audio." Adrian. "Send it." 5 minutes later, Adrian sat in his car, earbuds in, listening to his wife and brother-in-law plan his destruction. The audio quality was crystal clear. Evan's people were worth whatever he'd paid them. Victor's voice, smooth as aged whiskey. "6 months, Sandra. Maybe less. After the promotion goes through, we'll have everything lined up." Sandra's laugh, bright and cruel. "God, I can't wait. 25 years of listening to him talk about that stupid car, pretending to care about his boring job." "The house?" "Community property, but with the abuse allegations, I'll get it. Plus alimony. Adrian makes good money for a grease monkey." "And Caitlin?" "She'll believe whatever I tell her. She always does." Adrian ripped the earbuds out, his stomach churning. Not Caitlin. They could take his money, his house, his dignity, but not his daughter. Not her love, her trust, her future. He called Evan back. "I want to move assets, now." "Already drafted the paperwork. Legal transfers to protect your interests. The car collection goes to Caitlin as an early inheritance. Retirement accounts we can't touch, but your liquid assets, we can move those. Do it." "Adrian, are you sure about tomorrow night? We could handle this quietly through the courts. They want to destroy me publicly, make me the villain." Adrian's voice was calm, cold. They chose the battlefield. Friday dawned crisp and bright, October sun painting Toledo in shades of gold and rust. Adrian went to work, performed his duties, smiled at coworkers. At lunch, he met Caitlin at her favorite campus cafe. "Dad, you sounded weird on the phone. Is everything okay?" His daughter sat across from him, so like her mother in features, but with his steady temperament, his need for truth. She'd inherited the best of them both before the rot set in. "Caitlin, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Her brown eyes, his eyes narrowed. "You're scaring me. Your mother and I. We're having problems. Serious problems. Things are going to happen soon. That will be hard to understand." "Are you getting divorced?" The word came out small, wounded. Yes. Caitlin's face crumpled. Adrian reached across the table, taking her hands. Listen to me. Whatever happens, whatever you hear, remember that I love you. That has never changed and never will change. What did Mom do? Because of course she knew. His brilliant daughter had probably sensed the fractures before he had. Tonight, at Uncle Victor's party, just be ready, and remember I love you. She squeezed his hands, tears streaming. I love you too, Daddy. Adrian hadn't heard that word in years. It nearly broke him. That evening he dressed in his best suit, the charcoal one Sandra had bought him for their 20th anniversary. He slipped the USB drive into his inner pocket, next to his heart. All the evidence, compressed into a device smaller than his thumb. Sandra emerged from the bathroom in red silk, the dress she'd worn to seduce him all those years ago, now repurposed for public performance. She looked beautiful. She looked like a stranger. You look handsome, she said, adjusting his tie with wifely familiarity. You look stunning, he replied truthfully. In the car, Sandra chattered about the party, who would be there, how proud she was of Victor. Adrian drove in silence, watching Toledo slip past the windows. Somewhere in this city was the courthouse where they'd married, young and broke and stupid in love. That couple was dead now, murdered by silk dresses and hotel rooms and recorded conspiracies. The grandeur Toledo blazed with light, valet attendants scrambling to handle the influx of luxury vehicles. Adrian handed over the keys to his practical sedan, helped Sandra out, played the supportive husband one last time. The ballroom was spectacular crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, centerpieces of autumn flowers that must have cost more than most people's monthly salary. A stage dominated one end, complete with massive projection screen for the evening's presentations. Adrian! Sandra! Linda swooped down on them, radiant in designer blue. Doesn't everything look amazing? Beautiful, Adrian agreed, accepting champagne from a passing waiter. He spotted his allies scattered through the crowd. Evan Davies near the bar, ostensibly chatting with other lawyers, but positioned with clear sightlines to the stage. Courtney at a corner table, her plus-own, a friend from the IT department who happened to be excellent with audio-visual equipment. Even Frank had come, his police retirement dinner invitation getting him past security. Victor held court near the stage, accepting congratulations like a king granting audiences. He caught Adrian's eye, raised his glass in mock salute. Adrian raised his own, letting nothing show on his face. Dinner was 5 courses of rich food Adrian couldn't taste. He sat between Sandra and Linda, listening to their bright chatter, watching Victor work the room. The man was good, Adrian had to admit. Charm and confidence radiating from every gesture, every practiced smile. Sandra's phone buzzed during the salad course. She glanced at it, smiled, showed it to Victor when he passed their table. They shared a look of anticipation that made Adrian's stomach turn. Planning their next rendezvous, probably. After tonight, it wouldn't matter. Finally, dessert was cleared and the speeches began. The CEO of Grandeur Hotels took the stage, praising Victor's dedication, his results, his bright future with the company. Victor climbed the steps to thunderous applause, his smile broad and gleaming. "Thank you," Victor said into the microphone, voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "Thank you all for being here, for supporting this incredible journey." Adrian stood. The movement was subtle, but Courtney's friend caught it, ready at the AV controls. Adrian walked toward the stage with measured steps, every eye following him. Sandra half rose, confusion flickering across her face. "Adrian?" she called. He didn't look back. Victor's speech faltered as Adrian climbed the stage steps. "Adrian? What are you—" "Excuse me," Adrian said pleasantly, taking the microphone from Victor's unresisting hand. "I apologize for interrupting, but I have something important to share about our guest of honor." The ballroom fell silent, 500 people holding their collective breath. Adrian pulled out the USB drive, handed it to Courtney's friend at the control board. "You see," Adrian continued, his voice carrying clearly, calmly, "Victor Blackwood is many things. Successful businessman, rising star, devoted husband." He paused, meeting Sandra's horrified gaze across the room. And for the past year, he's also been sleeping with my wife. The gasp that went through the crowd was like wind through wheat. On the massive screen behind Victor, the first image appeared. Sandra and Victor kissing outside Le Meridien Columbus. "No," Sandra's voice cut through the shocked murmurs. "No, that's not Adrian. Stop this." But Adrian was just beginning. More images flashed on screen. Credit card records, hotel receipts, the photographs from a dozen different meetings, each one more damning than the last. 25 years, Adrian said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. That's how long I've been married to Sandra. That's how long I trusted her. Trusted him. Family. We called each other. The audio began to play, Sandra and Victor's voices filling the ballroom with crystal clarity. Adrian makes good money for a grease monkey. The abuse allegations should stick. He's been acting strange enough. 6 months and we'll be free. With his money. The screen showed the text messages, blown up large enough for everyone to read. The plans. The mockery. The casual cruelty of two people planning to destroy someone who loved them. Victor stood frozen on stage, his face gray beneath his tan. At the family table, Linda had risen to her feet, her mouth open in a silent scream. Sandra pushed through the crowd, designer heels clicking on marble, her face a mask of rage. "Lies!" she shrieked, reaching the stage. "He's lying! He faked all of this!" "Did I fake your voice, Sandra?" Adrian asked, still calm. "Did I fake the hotel records? The credit card charges?" He looked out at the crowd, finding familiar faces twisted in shock and disgust. "Did I fake 25 years of loyalty while you were—" Sandra lunged for the microphone. Security intercepted her, but not before she screamed, "You bastard! You pathetic, boring bastard! You think this matters? You think anyone cares about your stupid evidence?" "I think they care about truth," Adrian replied. Behind him, Charles Dubois, CEO of Grandeur Hotels, had risen from his seat. His face was purple with rage, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Blackwood, my office, Monday morning, you're done." Victor finally found his voice. "Charles, please, this is all a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Dubois roared. "I just heard you planning to defraud your brother-in-law, using company resources for your affairs. You're not just done here, Blackwood. I'll make sure you never work in hospitality again." The dam broke. Linda rushed the stage, slapping Sandra hard enough to snap her head back. "You whore! You destroyed my family!" She turned on Victor, nails raking across his face. "I want a divorce! I want everything!" Caitlin appeared at Adrian's side, tears streaming down her face. He pulled her close, shielding her from the chaos erupting around them. She was sobbing, but when she looked up at him, he saw understanding in her eyes. And love. Still love. "Let's go," he murmured. They walked off the stage together, leaving the wreckage behind. Evan Davies met them at the ballroom doors, handing Adrian a thick envelope. "Divorce papers, already filed. Given tonight's evidence, I think we'll do very well." In the parking lot, Adrian breathed October air that tasted like freedom. His hands shook now, adrenaline leaving his system. Behind them, the Grandeur's windows flickered with camera flashes. Someone was documenting the meltdown for social media, probably. "Dad?" Caitlin's voice was small. "What happens now?" Adrian looked at his daughter, this brilliant young woman who deserved so much better than the example her parents had set. "Now we go home. Tomorrow we start over. Build something better." "Without Mom?" "Without her lies," Adrian corrected gently. "But you can still love her, Caitlin. That's your choice. Always your choice." They drove home in silence, leaving the grandeur and its chaos in the rearview mirror. Adrian's phone buzzed constantly, calls, texts, the modern world's instant reaction to scandal. He turned it off. At home, Adrian poured himself a whiskey, sat in his garage, and looked at his Mustang. Tomorrow there would be lawyers and papers, and the bitter division of a life. But tonight, Adrian Miller was free. The perfect facade had shattered, but what emerged from the wreckage might be something better, something honest, something real. He raised his glass to the classic car, to new beginnings, to the truth that sets you free even as it burns your world to ash. Here's to tomorrow, he said to the silence. And for the first time in months, Adrian Miller smiled. The Toledo Blade ran the story on page 1. Hotel heirs fall, Blackwood scandal rocks business community. By morning, everyone in Northwest Ohio knew. Adrian's phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Reporters, acquaintances, distant relatives suddenly concerned about his well-being. He'd turned it off, sitting instead in his lawyer's conference room while Evan Davies laid out the battle plan. Sandra's attorney filed a response, Evan said, sliding papers across the polished table. They're claiming the evidence was illegally obtained, that you orchestrated a public humiliation as emotional abuse. Adrian almost laughed. Emotional abuse? It's a tactic. They're trying to muddy the waters, make you look vindictive. Evan's smile was sharp. Lucky for us, Ohio's one-party consent law means your recordings are admissible. And the hotel employee who agreed to testify? Gold. Through the window, November rain painted Toledo in shades of gray. Adrian watched droplets race down the glass, thinking of Caitlin. She'd stayed with him last night, both of them sleepless, talking until dawn. His daughter's strength amazed him, the way she'd held herself together even as her world fractured. What about Victor? Adrian asked. Grandier's forensic accountants found irregularities going back 2 years. Expense reports for client meetings that coincide with your wife's conference dates. They're pressing charges. Evan leaned back. Your brother-in-law is looking at serious time. The door opened. Courtney entered with coffee and a grim expression. Adrian, you need to see this. She handed him her phone. Facebook, naturally. Sandra had posted a lengthy statement, painting herself as the victim of a controlling husband who'd stalked her, manipulated evidence, destroyed her career out of jealousy. The comments were split, some calling her out, others offering sympathy. Let her rant, Evan advised. Social media theatrics won't help her in court. But Adrian felt the sting anyway. 25 years reduced to public mudslinging. He thought of their wedding day. Sandra, radiant in a simple sundress because they couldn't afford more, promising to stand by him through everything. Mr. Miller? Evan's secretary appeared. There's a Linda Blackwood here. She says it's urgent. Adrian tensed. He hadn't spoken to his sister since the party. Linda entered looking haggard, designer clothes wrinkled, makeup smeared from crying. Adrian, I'm so sorry, she began, then broke down completely. He awkwardly patted her shoulder as she sobbed. Linda, I knew, she gasped out. Part of me knew. The late meetings, the weekend trips. But I didn't want to see it. And with my own sister-in-law. Fresh tears came. How could they? Adrian had no answer. The betrayal cut both ways. Sandra had destroyed not just their marriage, but Linda's too. Victor's selfishness had poisoned everything it touched. What will you do? He asked quietly. Divorce him. Take everything I can. Linda's tears hardened into fury. My lawyer says with the criminal charges, I'll get the house, the investments. He can rot in prison for all I care. After she left, Adrian sat in silence. Evan reviewed strategy, but Adrian's mind wandered. Tomorrow would bring the first hearing. Sandra's attempts to claim half of everything, maybe more with alimony. The house they'd built together, the savings scraped together across decades, all fodder for legal machinery. That evening, Adrian found sanctuary in Frank's garage. The retired cop had his own project car, a '72 Chevelle that never quite ran right. They worked in companionable silence, wrenches turning, problems that could actually be solved. Saw the news, Frank said eventually. Hell of a thing. Yeah. How's Caitlin handling it? Better than me, honestly. Adrian adjusted a belt tensioner. She's strong. Gets that from... He stopped. From her mother, he'd almost said. Frank understood. Kids are resilient, and she's got a good head on her shoulders. You did right by her. I hope so. Listen, Frank set down his tools. I've seen a lot of marriages explode. Cop for 30 years, you see everything. But what you did standing up, refusing to be a victim that takes guts, your daughter sees that. Adrian's hands stilled. He thought of Caitlin at breakfast that morning, making eggs while he made coffee, both of them learning to navigate this new reality. She'd hugged him before leaving for class, whispered, "Love you, Dad," like a benediction. Mr. Miller? a voice called from outside. Adrian emerged to find a young man in an expensive suit, the kind Victor used to wear. Process server, probably. But the man smiled nervously. "I'm James Chen from the Toledo Business Journal. I was wondering if you'd comment on the grandeur investigation. Sources say you provided crucial evidence." "No comment," Adrian said firmly. "What about the rumors that Sandra Miller was involved in fraudulent property deals with Victor Blackwood? That they were using grandeur connections to—" "I said no comment." Adrian's voice carried an edge that made the reporter step back. "Of course. Sorry to bother you." Chen retreated to his car. Frank whistled low. "Fraudulent property deals? News to me." But Adrian filed it away. If Sandra and Victor had been running scams beyond their affair. His phone buzzed. "Caitlin. Dad, Mom's been calling. Says she wants to explain. What do I do?" Adrian typed back, "Whatever feels right to you. No pressure either way." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Finally, "I'm not ready. Maybe not ever." "That's okay. Love you. Love you too." The rain had stopped. Adrian stood in Frank's driveway, breathing November air that smelled like wet leaves and motor oil. Somewhere across town, Sandra was probably strategizing with her lawyer, spinning stories about emotional abuse and vindictive husbands. Victor might be in a holding cell, his designer suit replaced with county orange. But here now, Adrian felt something he hadn't expected. Peace. Not happiness. Not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But peace in knowing he'd chosen truth over comfortable lies, dignity over silent suffering. "Come on," Frank said. "Let's get that Chevelle running. Some problems we can actually fix." Adrian smiled grimly and followed his friend back into the garage. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and lies, courtrooms, and custody battles. But tonight, he had honest work and true friends. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The Lucas County Courthouse stood like a fortress of justice against December's gray sky. Adrian adjusted his tie in the parking lot mirror, steadying himself for what lay ahead. 3 weeks since the grandeur disaster, and today Sandra would face him across a courtroom. "Ready?" Evan Davies appeared beside him, briefcase in hand, armor in a 3-piece suit. "As I'll ever be." They walked through security, past clusters of lawyers and worried clients. Adrian spotted Sandra near the elevator, still beautiful, still perfectly composed in a black suit that screamed competence and victimhood. Her lawyer, a shark named Morrison with slicked-back hair and predatory eyes, whispered urgently in her ear. Sandra's gaze found Adrian's. For a moment something flickered there, regret? Anger. Then her face hardened into a mask of injured innocence. "Adrian," she said coolly as they waited for the elevator. He said nothing. What was left to say? In the courtroom, Judge Patricia Hernandez presided with no-nonsense efficiency. Adrian had researched her 15 years on the bench, reputation for seeing through theatrics. He hoped the reputation was earned. "This is a preliminary hearing regarding Miller versus Miller," Judge Hernandez began. "I've reviewed the initial filings. Mr. Morrison, you've made some serious allegations about evidence gathering." Morrison stood, oil smooth. "Your Honor, my client has been the victim of a calculated campaign of stalking and harassment. Mr. Miller hired professionals to illegally record private conversations, violated her privacy, and orchestrated a public humiliation designed to destroy her career and reputation. Those are serious charges," the judge noted. "Mr. Davies," Evan rose. "Your Honor, Ohio Revised Code 2933.52 clearly permits one-party consent recording. The hotel employee testimony was given freely. As for public humiliation, my client simply revealed the truth about an affair that Mrs. Miller and Mr. Blackwood conducted for over a year, during which they planned to defraud my client of assets and destroy his reputation with false abuse allegations." "Objection," Morrison snapped. "That's speculation." "I have the recordings," Evan said calmly. "Would you like to hear them?" The judge's eyebrows rose. "Approach." Both lawyers conferred at the bench. Adrian watched Sandra, who stared straight ahead, hands folded. She'd worn her wedding ring, he noticed. Nice touch. "I'll allow the recordings," Judge Hernandez decided. "But keep it relevant, Mr. Davies." The courtroom filled with Sandra's voice, tinny through speakers, but unmistakably hers. Caitlin will believe whatever I tell her. She always does. Then Victor. The abuse allegations should stick. He's been acting strange enough. Sandra's knuckles whitened. At the plaintiff's table, Adrian felt Courtney's supportive hand on his shoulder. She'd insisted on coming, bringing Frank along for moral support. More excerpts played. The planning, the mockery, the casual cruelty of two people dissecting a marriage like a business merger. With each word, Sandra seemed to shrink into her chair. Your Honor, Morrison tried to interrupt. The context. The context seems quite clear, Judge Hernandez said coldly. Continue, Mr. Davies. Evan presented financial records, the cash withdrawals, the hotel charges, the gifts purchased for a lover while Adrian worked overtime to support his family. Then came the hotel employee, nervous but clear in testimony about seeing Sandra and Victor multiple times, always as Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. Did they seem aware you recognized them? Evan asked. No, sir, they were. Distracted, very affectionate. Sandra's mask finally cracked. Her lawyer whispered furiously, but she shook him off. I'd like to address the court, she announced. Morrison looked stricken. Your Honor, I advise. It's my life, Sandra snapped. She stood, facing the judge. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, it was wrong, but I was lonely. Adrian was always in that garage, always at work, always focused on everything but me. I'm not proud of what I did, but I won't be painted as some calculating monster. I loved my husband once. I love my daughter still. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to lose everything. Adrian found himself standing before he realized it. You planned to take everything from me. You called me stupid, boring, a grease monkey only good for his paycheck. You were going to claim I abused you. I was angry, Sandra shot back. People say things, for a year, every week, every meeting, planning my destruction while sleeping in my bed? Adrian's voice cracked. I gave you everything, my trust, my life, my heart. And you threw it away for what? A man who cheated on my sister, who's now facing prison. Don't you dare, Sandra started forward. Morrison grabbed her arm. Enough, Judge Hernandez commanded. Both of you sit down. They sat. Adrian's hands trembled with spent adrenaline. I've heard enough for today, the judge continued. Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting Mr. Miller's motion for exclusive temporary possession of the marital home. Mrs. Miller, you have 72 hours to collect personal belongings under supervision. Financial accounts are frozen pending full accounting. As for custody, Miss Miller, you're 22? Caitlin stood in the gallery. Yes, Your Honor. Your preference? I choose to live with my father. Clear, decisive, devastating. Sandra made a sound like she'd been punched. Caitlin, please. We're adjourned, Judge Hernandez said firmly. Full hearing in 30 days. The courtroom erupted in motion. Sandra rushed toward Caitlin, who backed away, shaking her head. Morrison dragged his client toward the exit, already planning damage control. Adrian stood slowly, feeling every one of his 52 years. Evan clapped his back. That went well. Better than well. But Adrian watched his daughter's face as Sandra disappeared into the hallway, saw the pain there despite her brave front. Victory in court meant nothing if it broke Caitlin's heart. Outside, December wind cut through his coat. The press had gathered news of Victor's arrest had made the scandal irresistible. Cameras flashed, questions shouted. Evan and Frank formed a protective wedge, getting them to the car. Mr. Miller, how does it feel to destroy your wife's career? Any comment on Victor Blackwood's indictment? Is it true Sandra Miller was involved in fraudulent? The car door slammed, cutting off the chaos. Caitlin sat between Adrian and Courtney, silent tears streaming. I'm sorry, Adrian said helplessly. I'm so sorry you had to. Stop. Caitlin wiped her face. Just stop apologizing. You didn't do this. She did. They did. A shaky breath. I miss my mom. The mom I thought I had. Courtney passed tissues while Frank drove, steady and sure through Toledo's industrial streets. They ended up at a small diner near the university, the kind of place where nobody cared about scandals or court hearings. Over coffee and pie, color returned to Caitlin's cheeks. She even laughed when Frank told stories about his rookie years, carefully avoiding any mention of domestic disputes. "So what happens now?" she asked eventually. "Now we wait," Evan said. "Discovery phase. Their side will dig for anything to use against us. Our side will document every asset, every lie, every scheme. It won't be pretty. But we'll get through it," Adrian added firmly. "Together." Caitlin squeezed his hand. "Together." Later, alone in his too-quiet house, Adrian walked through rooms that still smelled like Sandra's perfume. Her clothes hung in the closet. Her coffee mug sat by the sink. 25 years of shared life, and soon strangers would catalog it all for division. He found himself in the garage, hands automatically reaching for tools. The Mustang gleamed under fluorescence, patient and unchanging. Adrian ran his palm along her hood, feeling the familiar calm settle over him. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, but he recognized the voice immediately when he answered. "Adrian? It's Rachel from Rachel's Restorations. I heard you might need some parts for a full restoration. Thought I'd check if you're still interested." He'd contacted her weeks ago before his world exploded. The restoration shop owner with the easy laugh and encyclopedic knowledge of classic cars. Yes, still interested, though things are complicated right now." "I saw the news," she said gently. "No pressure. But sometimes working with your hands helps when life gets complicated. The offer stands whenever you're ready." After they hung up, Adrian stood in his garage, surrounded by tools and memories. Tomorrow would bring more battles, more pain, more public dissection of private wounds. But tonight, he had his daughter's love, his friend's support, and the promise of rebuilding not just an engine, but a life. The restoration would be difficult, expensive, exhausting. But Adrian Miller had never shied away from hard work, and some things some people were worth saving. January in Toledo brought the kind of cold that settled into your bones. Adrian sat in the courthouse hallway, watching snow fall past the tall windows, each flake a small reminder that time moved forward whether you were ready or not. Today would end his marriage, officially and irrevocably. "They're ready for us," Evan Davies said, appearing from the courtroom. His expression was carefully neutral, the face of a man who'd shepherded dozens through this particular circle of hell. Adrian stood, straightening his tie. The same charcoal suit from the Grandeur disaster, now his armor for legal battles. Down the hall he could see Sandra with Morrison, her posture rigid, dressed in conservative navy playing the wronged wife to the end. The courtroom was smaller than the one they'd used for preliminaries, more intimate somehow. Judge Hernandez presided again, her dark eyes taking in both parties with clinical detachment. Adrian took his seat, aware of Caitlin behind him in the gallery, flanked by Courtney and Frank, his support system, cobbled together from friendship and shared pain. "We're here for the final hearing in Miller versus Miller," Judge Hernandez began. "I've reviewed all submitted evidence, financial disclosures, and testimonies. Mr. Morrison, do you have any final statements?" Morrison stood, his shark smile nowhere in evidence. The past weeks had not been kind to Sandra's case. "Your Honor, we maintain that the division of assets should reflect the length of the marriage and my client's contributions to the family's success." "Contributions?" Evan interrupted smoothly. "Your Honor, we've documented systematic deception, financial manipulation, and conspiracy to defraud. Mrs. Miller's contributions included planning to falsely accuse my client of abuse." "I've heard the recordings," Judge Hernandez said dryly. "Multiple times. Let's proceed to my ruling." Adrian's hands clenched in his lap. Beside him, Evan remained perfectly still, a predator waiting to strike if needed. "On the matter of divorce," the judge continued, "I grant the petition based on adultery. The evidence is overwhelming and undisputed." Sandra made a small sound, quickly suppressed. Adrian didn't look at her. Couldn't. "Regarding asset division, given the documented adultery, the evidence of financial deception, and the conspiracy to defraud Mr. Miller, I'm ordering an unequal distribution. Mr. Miller will receive 85% of marital assets, including the primary residence. Mrs. Miller will receive 15%, from which legal fees and documented misappropriated funds will be deducted." Morrison shot to his feet. "Your Honor, This leaves my client virtually destitute. Your client should have considered that before conducting a year-long affair while planning to destroy her husband, Judge Hernandez replied coldly. The court particularly notes the recorded statements regarding false abuse allegations. Such tactics are reprehensible and will not be rewarded. Adrian felt no triumph, only a hollow relief. Numbers on paper, percentages and deductions, the arithmetic of a life destroyed. Furthermore, the judge continued, the court orders Mrs. Miller to pay restitution for documented misuse of marital funds for her extramarital relationship. The amount of $37,000 will be garnished from her share of assets. Now Sandra did react, a sharp intake of breath that carried across the courtroom. Adrian finally looked at her. The beautiful mask had cracked completely, revealing something desperate and ugly beneath. As for personal property, all premarital assets remain with their original owners. The vehicle collection transferred to Caitlin Miller stands as a valid gift. Thank you, Your Honor, Evan murmured. We're not finished, Judge Hernandez said. There's the matter of Mr. Blackwood. The courtroom door opened. A bailiff escorted Victor in, hands cuffed in front, orange jumpsuit replacing his designer suits. He'd lost weight, his face gaunt. That easy confidence evaporated. His eyes found Sandra's briefly before sliding away. Mr. Blackwood has pled guilty to embezzlement and conspiracy charges, the judge announced. His testimony confirms the relationship timeline and financial misconduct. Mr. Blackwood, you've agreed to make restitution to Mr. Miller? Victor's voice came out rough, unused. Yes, Your Honor. $50,000 for my role in the conspiracy. Adrian stared at his former brother-in-law. This broken man had once commanded rooms, charmed investors, played puppet master with lives. Now he looked like what he was, a common criminal who'd gambled everything and lost. Sentencing is set for next month, Judge Hernandez noted. The prosecution is recommending 18 months. Mr. Blackwood, you're remanded to custody. As the bailiff led Victor away, he paused near Adrian's table. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for what it's worth. Adrian said nothing. What was there to say? Sorry didn't rebuild trust or resurrect love. Sorry was just another word, as empty as all the promises that came before. This court is adjourned, Judge Hernandez declared. The divorce is final. Good luck to you both. Good luck. Adrian almost laughed at the absurdity. He stood mechanically, shaking Evan's hand, accepting Courtney's hug, Frank's solid pat on the back. Caitlin wrapped her arms around him, and he held his daughter tight, breathing in her shampoo, grounding himself in this one good thing salvaged from the wreckage. Sandra approached as they gathered their things. Morrison tried to stop her, but she shook him off. Adrian, she said. He turned, meeting those green eyes that had once been his whole world. Up close, he could see the toll makeup caking fine lines, hair dull despite professional styling. The real estate shark reduced to a minnow. What, Sandra? I wanted you to know. It wasn't all lies. In the beginning. Don't. Adrian cut her off. Just don't. You made your choices. Live with them. Her face crumpled. Caitlin won't even look at me. You planned to manipulate her, use her against me. Did you think she'd forgive that? I was angry, hurt. You were always in that garage, always working to support us, to build our life. Adrian's voice stayed level, but something burned beneath. If you were lonely, you could have talked to me, gone to counseling, anything but what you did. Sandra's tears started then, ruining her careful makeup. I loved him. No, Adrian said quietly. You loved what he represented. Excitement, money, status, and he loved the conquest. Neither of you loved anything real. He turned away, done with this conversation, done with her. But Sandra's hand caught his arm. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. I've lost everything. Adrian gently removed her grip. You're supposed to rebuild, start over, find out who Sandra is when she's not lying to everyone, including herself. I don't know how. Neither did I, but here we are. He walked away then, joining his family, his real family, chosen through loyalty rather than blood or law. Behind him, Sandra stood alone in the emptying courtroom, Morrison hovering uncertainly nearby. Outside, January air bit sharp and clean. Adrian breathed deep, feeling something shift in his chest. Not healing. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of possibility. "Buy you lunch?" Frank offered. "That diner makes a mean chili." "Sounds good," Adrian agreed. As they walked to their cars, Caitlin slipped her hand into his. "You okay, Dad?" Adrian considered the question. His marriage was over. His ex-wife would struggle with poverty and shame. His former brother-in-law faced prison. The life he'd built over 25 years lay in ruins. But his daughter walked beside him. Friends surrounded him. He had his work, his integrity, and the knowledge that he'd chosen truth over comfortable lies. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think I will be." The snow kept falling, covering Toledo in clean white silence. Somewhere across town, Sandra would be packing what remained of her life. Victor would be counting days in a cell. But Adrian Miller walked forward into whatever came next, no longer carrying the weight of their betrayal. The verdict was in. Justice, such as it was, had been served. Now came the harder part, learning to live again. Spring arrived early that year, catching Toledo by surprise with warm winds and sudden green. Adrian stood in the doorway of their new house, smaller than the old one, but somehow more honest, watching Caitlin load boxes into her car. "You sure you got everything?" he called. "Dad, I'm moving across town, not across the country." Caitlin laughed, but came over to hug him anyway. "I'll be back for Sunday dinner." 6 months since the divorce. 6 months of rebuilding, restructuring, learning who Adrian Miller was without Sandra's shadow. The big house had sold quickly, the profits divided according to the judge's ruling. Adrian had found this 2-bedroom ranch near the university, with a detached garage perfect for his work. "Call when you get settled," he said, releasing her. "Will do. You sure you'll be okay?" Adrian smiled. "I've got a transmission to rebuild. I'll be fine." Caitlin studied him with those sharp eyes, so like his own. "You look good, Dad. Happy." "Getting there," he admitted. She'd graduated summa cum laude, passed the bar on her first try, and landed a position at Davies and Associates. Evan had been impressed enough to offer her a job on the spot. Now she was moving into her own apartment, ready to start her career. Adrian's pride could have lit up the whole neighborhood. After her car disappeared around the corner, Adrian retreated to his garage. The Mustang sat in pieces, engine block on a stand, body panels carefully labeled and stored. He'd decided on a complete frame-off restoration, doing it right this time. No shortcuts, no compromises. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Those brake calipers came in. Want to swing by?" Adrian smiled despite himself. Over the winter, their professional relationship had evolved into friendship. Coffee after parts runs, discussions about restoration techniques that stretched into hours. She was brilliant with engines, funny in a dry way that caught him off guard, and never pushed for more than he was ready to give. "Be there in 20, he typed back. Rachel's restorations occupied a converted warehouse on Toledo's east side, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Adrian found her elbow-deep in a '69 Camaro engine bay, grease streaking her cheek. "Customer wants it ready for cruise season," she explained, not looking up. "Think I found why it's been missing." "Vacuum leak?" "Bingo. Hand me that gasket." They worked in comfortable silence, Adrian assisting while she diagnosed. This was what he'd missed: partnership without pretense, shared competence, the satisfaction of solving problems together. "Your calipers are on the shelf," Rachel said eventually, wiping her hands. "Top box." Adrian retrieved them, admiring the craftsmanship, quality parts for a quality restoration. "How's Caitlin's move going?" Rachel asked. "Just finished loading her car. Empty nest officially achieved." "You okay with that?" Adrian considered. "Yeah, she's ready. Hell, she's been taking care of me more than the other way around lately." Rachel smiled. "Kids do that. My son called last week to make sure I was eating vegetables. I'm 45, not 5. They laughed, and Adrian felt that warmth again, the one that had been growing slowly over months of careful friendship. Not the desperate fire of young love or the comfortable assumption of long marriage. Something new, built on shared interests and mutual respect. "Listen," Rachel said, suddenly serious. There's a car show next weekend. Mostly classics, a few customs. Thought you might want to check it out. Scope the competition for when the Mustang's ready. Sounds good, Adrian agreed. Then, surprising himself, want to grab dinner after? I know a place that does great Italian. Rachel's smile widened. Are you asking me on a date, Adrian Miller? Maybe, yes, if you're interested. I'm interested, she said simply. But let's be clear, I know your history. I'm not looking to be a rebound or replace anyone. We take this slow, see where it goes naturally. Slow sounds perfect, Adrian admitted. They shook on it, grease-stained hands and all. That evening, Adrian sat on his small back porch, nursing a beer and watching the sunset. Frank appeared at the fence they shared, carrying his own bottle. Heard Caitlin moved out, Frank said. This afternoon. Also heard you've been spending time at that restoration shop. Adrian smiled. News travels fast. It's a small neighborhood. Frank leaned on the fence. She good people? Yeah, she is. Good. You deserve some happiness, Adrian. After everything. They drank in silence, watching the sky fade from gold to purple. Adrian thought about the letter that had arrived last week, forwarded from his old address. Sandra's handwriting, postmarked from Michigan, where she'd moved in with her parents. He'd thrown it away unopened. Some chapters needed to stay closed. Ever hear what happened to Victor? Frank asked. 18 months in minimum security. Linda got everything in their divorce house, investments, even his precious BMW. She's dating some dentist now. Good for her. And Sandra. Working at a real estate office in Grand Rapids. Entry level. Adrian felt a flicker of something, not quite pity, not quite satisfaction. Caitlin says she sends cards, tries to call. Caitlin's not ready. May never be. That's her choice to make. Adrian's phone rang. Caitlin. Hey, Dad. I'm all moved in. The apartment's perfect. Small, but perfect. Need any help with furniture? Tomorrow? I've got to pick up a couch from the consignment shop. I'll bring the truck. Thanks. Oh, and Dad, I'm proud of you. For everything. For surviving, for starting over, just for being you. Adrian's throat tightened. Love you too, kiddo. After they hung up, Adrian remained on the porch as darkness settled over Toledo. In the garage, his Mustang waited patiently for resurrection. Next weekend, he had a date with a woman who understood engines and honest work. His daughter was launching her career with integrity intact. The wounds were still there, would always be there. Trust, once shattered, never quite reformed the same way. But scar tissue could be stronger than what came before if you let it heal properly. Adrian Miller had learned the hard way that some people were capable of breathtaking cruelty, of betrayal that cut to the bone. But he'd also learned that others like Courtney, Frank, Evan, and maybe Rachel offered friendship without conditions, support without judgment. Tomorrow he'd help his daughter move furniture. Next week, he'd take a careful step towards something new. And piece by piece, he'd rebuild that Mustang until she was better than factory new. It wasn't the life he'd planned. But maybe, just maybe, it was the life he was meant to have all along. The Toledo Classic Car Show stretched across the fairgrounds like a chrome and steel symphony. Adrian walked between rows of meticulously restored vehicles, October sun warming his shoulders, trying not to think about how this felt like a date. Because it was a date. His first in 27 years. That's a '71 Plymouth Cuda, Rachel said beside him, pointing to a purple beast of a car. Numbers matching, 446-pack. Owner told me he spent 3 years on the restoration. Worth it? Adrian agreed, admiring the flawless paint. Though I prefer the earlier models, cleaner lines. Rachel smiled. Mustang guy through and through. She wore jeans and a vintage racing team shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Casual, comfortable, nothing like Sandra's calculated elegance. Adrian found himself relaxing. They wandered past Chevelles and Camaros, Roadrunners and GTOs. Adrian's knowledge ran deep years of garage time, car magazines, endless tinkering, but Rachel matched him reference for reference. When they stopped at a pristine '69 Boss 429, she launched into a detailed explanation of the engine's racing history that had the owner nodding in impressed agreement. "How'd you get into this?" Adrian asked as they grabbed coffee from a vendor. "My dad," Rachel said, stirring sugar into her cup. "Single father, no idea what to do with a daughter, so he taught me what he knew: engines. We rebuilt a '67 Camaro together when I was 15. Still have it." "Smart man." "He was." Her voice softened. "Lost him 5 years ago. Heart attack in the shop. At least he went doing what he loved." Adrian touched her shoulder gently. "I'm sorry." "Thanks. The shop was his dream. Keeping it going. It's like keeping him alive, you know?" He did know. The Mustang project had become more than restoration, it was rebuilding himself, piece by careful piece. They spent the afternoon talking cars and life, finding an easy rhythm. Rachel told him about her son in college, studying engineering. Adrian shared Caitlin's stories, carefully skirting the minefield of the divorce details. She didn't push, didn't probe. When he went quiet, she simply pointed out another car, drew him back to safe ground. As the sun tilted toward evening, they headed for his promised Italian restaurant. Antonio's occupied a converted warehouse in Toledo's slowly gentrifying waterfront district. Nothing fancy checkered tablecloths, candles in wine bottles, the scent of garlic and basil heavy in the air. Adrian Miller, the owner, Antonio himself, greeted them. Long time, and with lovely company. Adrian flushed slightly. "Antonio, this is Rachel. Rachel, Antonio makes the best lasagna in Ohio." "Only Ohio?" Antonio clutched his chest in mock offense. "You wound me. Best lasagna in the Midwest, minimum." They were seated in a quiet corner, glasses of house red appearing without being ordered. Adrian found himself studying Rachel across the candlelight. Fine lines around her eyes spoke of laughter and sun. Her hands, when she gestured, showed the small scars and calluses of real work. No manicure, no rings except a simple silver band on her right hand. "So," she said, catching his examination, "this is weird for you." It wasn't a question. Adrian set down his wine glass. "That obvious? You've checked your phone 3 times but haven't looked at it. You're sitting like you're in a job interview, and you keep touching your wedding ring that isn't there anymore." Adrian looked at his bare ring finger, the pale indent still visible. 27 years of marriage, I don't really know how to do. This being dinner with a friend who happens to be female? "This being dinner with someone I'm attracted to," Adrian said, then immediately wanted to recall the words. Rachel's smile was warm. "Good. Honesty's a solid foundation. And for the record, the attraction's mutual. But Adrian, I meant what I said. We go at whatever pace works for you. No pressure, no expectations. Just see what develops." "Like a restoration project?" "Exactly like that. Start with a solid frame. Work out from there." Their food arrived: Antonio's famous lasagna, rich with meat and cheese and sauce that had simmered for hours. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing from cars to books to travel dreams deferred. Rachel had never been to Europe, wanted to see the Ferrari factory. Adrian had always planned to take Sandra to Italy, but work and life had intervened, and then it was too late. "It's not too late now," Rachel pointed out. "You're 52, not 90. Plenty of time for new dreams." Adrian considered this. The past year had been about survival, getting through each day. He hadn't thought about the future beyond next week's work schedule or the Mustang's next phase. "Speaking of the Mustang," Rachel said, "how's the engine rebuild going?" "Slow. I'm being meticulous. Every bolt, every gasket. Want it perfect?" "Perfection's overrated. Sometimes good enough is perfect enough." They argued this point good-naturedly through dessert tiramisu they split. Adrian surprised to find himself offering his fork across the table like a teenager. When had he last shared food with someone? Sandra had been obsessed with her figure, picking at salads while he ate alone. Outside, the October night was crisp, stars visible despite the city lights. They walked to their cars slowly, neither rushing the evening's end. "I had a good time," Rachel said, keys in hand. "Really good." "Me too." Adrian meant it. His chest felt lighter, like he'd set down a weight he hadn't known he was carrying. "Would you? I mean, if you wanted." "Adrian Miller, are you trying to ask me out again?" "Badly, apparently." She laughed. "How about you come by the shop Tuesday? I've got a line on some NOS trim pieces for your year Mustang. We can have coffee, talk carburetors." I'd like that. Rachel stepped closer, rose on her toes, and kissed his cheek. Nothing more, just warm lips against stubble, the scent of her shampoo. Tuesday, then. Adrian watched her drive away, touching the spot she'd kissed. His phone buzzed, Caitlin checking in. He smiled, typing back that he was fine, better than fine. At home, he sat in his garage, looking at the Mustang's progress. The engine block gleamed on its stand, rebuilt with new pistons, rings, bearings. The transmission waited for installation. Body panels hung organized on the walls. Still months of work ahead, but he could see it now, the finished car, midnight blue and chrome, ready for those drives along Lake Erie he'd always promised himself. His phone rang. For a moment, muscle memory expected Sandra's ringtone, but that was gone, deleted like their marriage. Instead, Courtney's name appeared. "How'd it go?" she asked without preamble. "How did you—" Adrian stopped. "Frank. He saw you leave. That man's better than Neighborhood Watch. So? Rachel nice?" "None of your business. Adrian Miller, I helped you through the worst year of your life. I've earned gossip rights. Spill." So he did, surprising himself with how much he wanted to talk about it. Courtney listened, made appropriate noises, didn't judge when he admitted how scared he'd been. "It's normal," she assured him. "After my divorce, first date I went on, I literally forgot how to eat. Like, forgot how to use a fork. Brain just stopped working. What did you do?" Laughed, told him I was nervous. He was too. We bonded over being disasters. She paused. "Adrian, you know you deserve this, right? To be happy?" Adrian looked at his wedding ring sitting in a dish on the workbench. He'd taken it off after the divorce was final, but couldn't bring himself to throw it away. 27 years of his life in that circle of gold. "I'm working on believing that," he said finally. "Good. That's all anyone can do. Work on it." After they hung up, Adrian returned to the Mustang. He picked up a wrench, found his rhythm in the familiar work. Tuesday, he'd see Rachel again. Next month, the engine would go back in the car. Spring would come, and with it, new roads to travel. He thought about his therapy sessions, Dr. Martinez's gentle voice. "Healing isn't linear, Adrian. Some days you'll feel whole, others broken all over again. The point is to keep moving forward, even when it's just inches." Tonight felt like more than inches. Tonight felt like miles. November rain hammered Toledo, turning the streets into rivers of reflected light. Adrian sat in his home office reviewing invoices for Midwest Precision when the doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting anyone. Caitlin was in court, Rachel at an auction in Detroit. Through the peephole, he saw a figure he barely recognized. Victor Blackwood stood on his porch, soaked through, a shell of his former self. Prison had carved away the soft edges, left him gaunt and hollow-eyed. His designer clothes were replaced by a cheap windbreaker and jeans that didn't fit right. Adrian's hand hesitated on the deadbolt. Every instinct screamed to leave it locked, to call Frank, to protect his hard-won peace. But something in Victor's posture, the defeated slump, the way he couldn't meet the peephole's eye, made Adrian open the door. "Adrian!" Victor's voice was rust and regret. "I know I have no right." "No, you don't." Adrian blocked the doorway. "What do you want?" "5 minutes, please. I need to say something. Then I'll go. You'll never see me again." Adrian studied his former brother-in-law. The man who'd helped destroy his marriage, who'd laughed about taking everything. Now he looked like nothing itself, a cautionary tale in flesh. 5 minutes. On the porch. Victor nodded, water dripping from his hair. "I'm dying." The words hung between them like a third presence. Adrian felt nothing, no satisfaction, no pity, just a distant curiosity. "Liver cancer, stage 4. Prison doctors found it 3 months ago." Victor's laugh was bitter. Ironic, right? All that wine, all those cocktails at fancy parties. Turns out they were killing me the whole time. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need to apologize. Really apologize, not that bullshit in court." Victor finally met Adrian's eyes. "I destroyed everything. Linda, you, my career. For what? For a woman who didn't love me any more than I loved her. We were using each other, playing some sick game." Adrian said nothing. Let him talk. Sandra threw me under the bus the minute things got hard. Blamed everything on me, the affair, the money, all of it. Last I heard, she was in Michigan selling insurance or something. Victor wiped rain from his face. I lost everything, Adrian. But you know what the worst part is? I earned it. Every bit of it. Yes, you did. Victor flinched but nodded. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know that's impossible. I needed you to know I'm sorry for all of it. For Linda especially. She didn't deserve what I put her through. Neither did I. No, you didn't. Victor reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. This is for Caitlin. Not money, I don't have any. Just a letter. Trying to explain, apologize. She doesn't have to read it, but if someday she wants to understand. Adrian took the envelope, noticed how Victor's hands shook. How long? 6 months, maybe less. Victor attempted his old smile, but it cracked at the edges. Funny thing about dying clarifies what matters. And what I did to you, to everyone. It's the worst thing I'll leave behind. A car drove by, tires hissing on wet asphalt. Adrian thought about 25 years of family dinners, holidays, the easy trust he'd extended to this man. All ashes now. I won't forgive you, Adrian said finally. I can't. You didn't just have an affair. You planned to destroy me, to take my daughter. That's not something I can absolve. I know. But I hope you find whatever peace you can. For Linda's sake, if nothing else. Victor's composure finally broke. Tears mixed with rain on his face. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. He turned to go, then paused. Adrian, take care of Linda. She always loved you, you know. As a brother. Don't let my poison ruin that too. Then he was gone, walking through the rain to a beat-up Honda, nothing like the BMW he'd once flaunted. Adrian watched him drive away, then closed the door on that chapter of his life. He sat in his kitchen, Victor's letter on the table, and called Caitlin. Dad? What's wrong? He told her about the visit, Victor's condition, the letter. She was quiet for a long moment. Do you want me to come over? No, sweetheart, I'm okay. The letter's here when you want it, if you want it. I don't know if I do. Maybe someday, but not now. That's fine, your choice, your timeline. After they hung up, Adrian made coffee and opened his laptop. An email waited from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line made his stomach clench. Please read Sandra. He almost deleted it. His finger hovered over the button, but the same impulse that made him open the door for Victor made him click open. Adrian, I know you hate me. You have every right. I'm writing because I need you to know something, and I'm afraid if I don't say it now, I never will. Victor is dying. He probably told you we're not in contact, but that's not entirely true. He called me last month, told me about the cancer. He also told me something else. He's been sober for 8 months. Goes to meetings, has a sponsor, the whole thing. Too little too late, but still. He made me realize some things. Hard things. Things I should have faced years ago. I was unhappy, Adrian. Not because of you, you were a good husband. Better than I deserved. I was unhappy because I couldn't be satisfied with good. I wanted extraordinary, exciting, dangerous. I wanted to be someone else, and Victor let me pretend I was. But it was all pretend. The woman he was with wasn't me any more than the woman you married was. I've been playing parts my whole life, and somewhere along the way I forgot who I actually am. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy, not the couples counseling I sabotaged. Turns out I have issues. Shocking, right? Narcissistic personality disorder, the doctor says. It's not an excuse, just an explanation. I'm broken in ways that hurt everyone around me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know that bridge is ash. I'm not even asking you to respond. I just needed you to know that I know what I did. All of it. The lies, the cruelty, the plan to destroy you. I remember every word, and they haunt me. You didn't deserve any of it. You were good to me, faithful to me, and I repaid that with betrayal. I threw away the best thing in my life because I was bored. How pathetic is that? I hope you found happiness. I hope Caitlin can forgive me someday, though I doubt it. I hope the woman I've seen you with, yes, I still have friends in Toledo who gossip, treats you the way I should have. Be well, Adrian. You deserve all the good things I couldn't give you. Sandra. Adrian read it twice, then closed the laptop. He felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. The woman who wrote that email was a stranger, as much as the woman he'd married had been. His phone buzzed. Rachel. Auction was a bust, but I found a '68 Mustang hubcap in perfect condition. Dinner when I get back? He smiled, texting back, "It's a date." Outside, the rain was stopping. Sun broke through clouds, painting Toledo in shades of gold and gray. Adrian made fresh coffee and headed to the garage. The Mustang waited, patient as always. He'd decided on the color Highland green, like McQueen's in Bullitt, a classic choice for a classic car. He thought about Victor, dying alone with his regrets, about Sandra, finally facing her demons too late to matter, about himself, rebuilding from rubble, finding unexpected joy in the construction. Dr. Martinez had been right. Healing wasn't linear. Some days were harder than others, but today, with ghosts laid to rest and the future spreading before him like an open road, Adrian Miller felt something he hadn't in years. Whole. The engagement ring caught spring sunlight through Antonio's window, throwing tiny rainbows across the tablecloth. Caitlin turned her hand, watching the modest diamond sparkle, while her fiancé, Marcus, sat beside her looking equal parts nervous and hopeful. "It's beautiful," Adrian said, meaning it. The ring wasn't ostentatious, nothing like the boulder Victor had given Linda all those years ago. It was simple, elegant, chosen with thought rather than flash. "I wanted to ask your permission first," Marcus admitted, adjusting his glasses. "Old-fashioned, I know, but Caitlin said you'd appreciate it." Adrian studied the young man across from him. Marcus Winters, junior associate at Davies and Associates, had been dating his daughter for 8 months, steady, intelligent, with a dry humor that matched Caitlin's wit. More importantly, he looked at her the way Adrian had once looked at Sandra before everything went to hell. "You did ask," Adrian reminded him. "Last month in my garage." "That was practice," Marcus said, flushing. "I was terrified you'd say no." "Why would I say no?" Adrian asked, though he knew. The shadow of betrayal stretched long. Every relationship now carried the ghost of what could go wrong. "Because you've seen what people can do to each other," Caitlin said quietly. "Because trust isn't easy anymore." Adrian reached across the table, taking his daughter's hand. "Your mother's choices were hers. They don't predict yours." "But what if—" "Hey," Adrian squeezed gently. "You are not her. And Marcus isn't Victor. You've built something real here, based on honesty. That matters." Antonio appeared with champagne, winking at Adrian. They'd planned this lunch for weeks, Caitlin wanting to share her news in the place where Adrian had taken his first steps back toward happiness with Rachel. "To new beginnings," Adrian toasted. "To family," Caitlin corrected. And they drank. After lunch, Adrian drove to the industrial complex where Mitchell Custom Parts had set up shop. The business had grown faster than expected. Courtney's engineering expertise combined with Adrian's network of classic car enthusiasts proving golden. They'd hired 2 machinists already, with plans for more. "There's the man of the hour," Courtney called from the office. "How'd the announcement go?" "Good. Marcus survived." "Poor kid. Remember when he first came to dinner? Thought he was going to pass out when you asked about his intentions." Adrian smiled, remembering. He held up well. Speaking of holding up well, Courtney slid a folder across the desk. "Quarterly numbers. We're in the black." "Officially." Adrian scanned the figures, pride warming his chest. They'd built this from nothing. No venture capital, no safety net. Just skill, determination, and the settlement money he'd invested instead of hoarding. "We need to celebrate," he said. "Already on it. Rachel's planning something at the shop. Act surprised." Adrian groaned. "I hate surprises." "No, you hate lies disguised as surprises. There's a difference." She was right, as usual. Adrian had learned to distinguish between secrets meant to deceive and those meant to delight. It hadn't been easy. Dr. Martinez called it recalibrating his threat detection, learning when suspicion served him and when it held him back. That evening, Adrian pulled into Rachel's Restorations to find the parking lot full. Through the windows, he could see streamers, balloons, the warm glow of gathering friends. His Mustang, finally complete in its Highland green glory, sat in the place of honor. "You knew," Rachel accused as he entered, but she was smiling. "Courtney's not subtle," Adrian admitted, accepting her kiss. "But I can still be surprised by this." This was everyone who mattered. Frank with his new girlfriend, a librarian who collected mystery novels. Linda, looking healthier than she had in years, her dentist boyfriend David at her side, Caitlin and Marcus. Even Evan Davies, usually all business, nursing a beer and arguing carburetor specifications with another car enthusiast. "Speech!" someone called out. Adrian shook his head, but they persisted. Finally, he climbed onto a workbench, looking out at the faces surrounding him. 2 years ago, he began, then stopped. How to explain the journey from that nightmare at the grandeur to this moment? 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. Everything I'd built, everything I'd believed in, turned out to be a lie. The room was quiet now, listening. But you know what I learned. We're not defined by what happens to us. We're defined by what we do next, by who stands with us when the world falls apart. He found Caitlin's eyes, saw her tears. By the children who choose love over bitterness. The friends who offer truth when comfortable lies would be easier. The new chances we almost don't take because we're scared. His gaze found Rachel, steady and sure. "I'm not grateful for what Sandra and Victor did. I never will be. But I'm grateful for where it led. For all of you. For the life I couldn't have imagined when I was too busy maintaining a facade to live authentically." He raised his beer. "To second chances. To real friends. To the family we choose." The toast echoed through the shop, followed by music and laughter. Adrian stepped down to find Rachel waiting. "Nice speech," she said. "I meant it." "I know." She studied him with those dark eyes that missed nothing. "You're different lately. Lighter." Adrian considered this. The weight he'd carried for so long, anger, betrayal, the need for revenge, had gradually dissolved. Not forgotten, but transformed into something else. Wisdom, maybe, or just acceptance. "I got a letter," he said, "from Victor's sister. He died last week." Rachel's hand found his. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. Not happy. Not sad. Just aware that it's over. All of it." They stood together, watching their friends celebrate. Marcus had Caitlin on the shop floor, attempting to dance to classic rock. Linda was laughing at something Frank said, the sound bright and free. Courtney was sketching engine modifications on a napkin, 3 gearheads hanging on every word. "You know what I want?" Adrian said suddenly. "What's that?" "To take that trip to Italy. See the Ferrari factory. Drink wine in Tuscany. Be tourists." Rachel's smile was radiant. "When?" "Soon. This summer. Before Caitlin's wedding, before the next project, before life gets in the way again." "Adrian Miller, are you actually suggesting spontaneity?" "Maybe I am." He pulled her closer. "Maybe I'm finally learning that planning everything doesn't guarantee safety, that sometimes the best parts of life are the ones you don't see coming. Like Rachel herself, like the success of the business, like the way Caitlin had grown into a woman of integrity despite everything, like the peace he'd found on the other side of destruction." The party went late, stories flowing with the beer. Adrian heard himself laughing, really laughing, at Frank's tale of arresting a drunk driver who turned out to be driving a stolen ice cream truck. He watched Caitlin glow with happiness, saw Linda relaxed in a way she'd never been with Victor. As the evening wound down, Adrian found himself outside with his Mustang. The restoration was perfect, every line, every detail exactly as it should be. But more than that, it was a testament to patience, to doing things right even when it was hard. "She's beautiful," a voice said behind him. Adrian turned to find Marcus, hands in his pockets. "Thanks. Caitlin told me the whole story. About her mom, about everything. I wanted you to know I'm not going anywhere, no matter what." Adrian studied the young man. "You can't promise that. Nobody can." "No," Marcus agreed. "But I can promise to try. To be honest when things are hard. To choose her every day, even when it's not easy." It was the right answer. Not perfect, not absolute, but real. "Then you have my blessing," Adrian said. "For whatever that's worth. Marcus's relief was palpable. They shook hands, understanding passing between them. Later, after the guests had gone and the shop was quiet, Adrian and Rachel sat on the hood of the Mustang, sharing a final beer. "Good day?" she asked. "The best," Adrian said, and meant it. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The business needed managing. Caitlin's wedding needed planning. Life would continue its complex dance. But tonight, surrounded by the evidence of resurrection, his car, his friendships, his capacity to love again, Adrian Miller felt rich beyond measure. The boy who'd worked double shifts to put his wife through school, the man who'd discovered betrayal in the cruelest way, the survivor who'd rebuilt from ashes, they were all part of him. But they didn't define him anymore. What defined him was this: the choice to keep going, to stay open, to believe that the best chapters might still be unwritten. In the shop's fluorescent light, the Mustang's paint gleamed like deep water, ready for the road, ready for whatever came next. Lake Erie stretched before them, May sunrise painting the water in shades of copper and gold. Adrian stood beside the Mustang, coffee steam curling in the cool morning air, watching the horizon emerge from darkness. "You were right," Rachel said, joining him against the hood. "This is perfect." They'd driven out early, leaving Toledo sleeping behind them. The wedding was tomorrow, a small ceremony at the courthouse, reception at Antonio's. Caitlin had insisted on simple, authentic, everything Sandra's wedding hadn't been. "Nervous?" Rachel asked. "About the wedding? No, Caitlin knows what she's doing." Adrian sipped his coffee. "About Italy? Terrified." Rachel laughed. 3 weeks in Europe with me, is that scary? 3 weeks without work, without projects, without distractions?" Adrian shook his head. "I haven't done that since never," Rachel finished, "which is exactly why we're going." A fishing boat crossed the horizon, early morning charter heading for walleye grounds. Adrian watched its progress, thinking about journeys and destinations. His phone buzzed. Linda. "Good morning, brother. Ready for today?" He smiled, typing back. The relationship with his sister had slowly healed, built on shared survival rather than old assumptions. She'd be at the wedding, David at her side, living proof that life could begin again at 50. "What are you thinking?" Rachel asked. "About forgiveness," Adrian said. "Not for them, for myself." "What do you need to forgive yourself for?" "For not seeing it sooner, for being naive, for trusting too much." Rachel set down her coffee, turning to face him fully. "Adrian, loving someone isn't a character flaw. Trusting your family isn't weakness. They betrayed that trust. That's on them, not you." "I know. Intellectually, I know. But sometimes the heart takes longer to learn what the head already knows." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher. 3 years since that spring morning when his perfect life revealed itself as illusion. 3 years of legal battles, therapy sessions, nights when sleep wouldn't come. But also 3 years of growth, of discovery, of building something genuine from the wreckage. "We should head back," Rachel said eventually. "Caitlin will panic if you're late to the rehearsal." 5 more minutes, Adrian said, not ready to leave this moment. Rachel leaned into him, understanding. This was what he'd missed most during the marriage's final years, not passion or excitement, but this quiet companionship. Someone who could share silence without needing to fill it. His phone rang. Courtney. "Adrian, small crisis. The Henderson order needs your signature before shipping. Can you swing by?" "On my way," he said, duty calling as always. "Go," Rachel said. "I'll meet you at the courthouse. And Adrian, don't overthink everything today. Just be present." He kissed her, tasting coffee and promise. "I'll try." The drive back to Toledo was smooth, morning traffic still light. The Mustang purred beneath him, responsive to every touch. He'd put 2,000 miles on her since the restoration, each one a small victory over the fear that had tried to cage him. At Mitchell Custom Parts, he found Courtney elbow-deep in paperwork, her expression harried. "Sorry to interrupt your day," she said, "but Henderson wants to triple his order. We need to discuss capacity." They spent an hour reviewing numbers, planning expansion, solving problems that had solutions. It felt good. this competence, this ability to build rather than simply survive. You know, Courtney said as they finished, I never thanked you properly for believing in this, in me. You don't need to thank me. We're partners. No, I do. After my divorce, I thought I was done. Too old to start over, too tired to try. But you showed me different, that it's never too late to become who you're supposed to be. Adrian felt his throat tighten. We showed each other. They embraced, brief but meaningful. Then Courtney pushed him toward the door. Go. You've got a wedding to attend. The courthouse was already gathering its small crowd when Adrian arrived. Caitlin stood with Marcus on the steps, radiant in a simple white dress. No designer gown, no ostentatious display, just his daughter, choosing her future with clear eyes. Dad! She rushed to hug him. I was starting to worry. Work emergency, handled now. He held her at arm's length, memorizing this moment. You look beautiful. Marcus is inside, making sure everything's ready. His parents are here, trying not to cry. She bit her lip. Dad, I need to tell you something. Adrian's stomach clenched, old fears rising. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Mom sent a gift, a letter and a check. I haven't opened either. The world seemed to pause. Sandra had been silent for over a year, respecting Caitlin's boundaries. Why now? What do you want to do? Adrian asked carefully. I don't know. Part of me wants to tear them up. Part of me. Caitlin's eyes filled. I hate her for what she did. But she's still my mother. Does that make me weak? No, Adrian said firmly. It makes you human. You get to feel however you feel about her. There's no right answer. What would you do? Adrian considered. I'd probably read the letter. The check. I'd donate to charity. But that's me. You need to do what brings you peace. Caitlin nodded, tucking the envelope into her purse. After the honeymoon, I'll decide then. Good plan. The ceremony was perfect in its simplicity. Adrian walked his daughter down the short aisle, placed her hand in Marcus's, stepped back to watch them exchange vows they'd written themselves. No mention of forever or absolutes instead, promises to choose each other daily, to face challenges together, to build something worth keeping. When the judge pronounced them married, the small gathering erupted in cheers. Adrian found himself crying, not from sadness, but from a joy so pure it hurt. The reception at Antonio's was intimate, filled with laughter and terrible dancing. Adrian gave a toast that had everyone reaching for tissues, then watched his daughter dance with her new husband to an old Motown song. She did good, Frank said, appearing at his elbow. That Marcus is solid. Yeah, he is. You did good too, raising her right, showing her how to handle adversity. Adrian shook his head. She figured that out herself. Maybe, but she had a good example to follow. As the evening wound down, Adrian found himself on Antonio's small patio, the same place he'd had his first date with Rachel. The irony wasn't lost on him, endings and beginnings occupying the same space. There you are, Rachel said, stepping outside. Caitlin's looking for you. Time for the father-daughter dance. Adrian groaned. I don't dance. Tonight you do. She was right, of course. Adrian let himself be led back inside, where Caitlin waited on the small dance floor. The song was one they'd loved when she was little, something about butterflies and flying away. Thank you, Caitlin whispered as they swayed, for everything, for showing me what strength really looks like. I just did what I had to do. No, Dad, you did so much more. You could have become bitter, could have closed yourself off. Instead, you chose to stay open, to love again, to trust again. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. Adrian couldn't speak past the lump in his throat, so he just held his daughter closer, remembering the little girl who'd rebuilt a Honda with him, who'd stood by him when her world shattered, who'd grown into this remarkable woman. The song ended too soon. Marcus claimed his bride, and Adrian found himself back with Rachel, watching the young couple glow with possibility. Italy next week, Rachel reminded him. You ready? Getting there, Adrian admitted. Later, after the goodbyes and well wishes, Adrian drove the Mustang through Toledo's quiet streets. Rachel dozed in the passenger seat, trust implicit in her relaxation. The city looked different now than it had 3 years ago, not changed physically, but transformed by his own evolution. He passed the house he'd shared with Sandra, now home to a young family who'd planted roses where his workshop had been. Past the grandeur, its lights blazing for some other celebration. Past a dozen landmarks of his old life, each one stripped of its power to wound. At home, his real home, the one he'd chosen, Adrian parked in the garage beside Rachel's Camaro. She stirred, smiling sleepily. "Good day." "The best," he said, helping her out. Inside, he found Victor's letter to Caitlin on the counter where she'd left it for safekeeping during the honeymoon. Adrian didn't open it, didn't need to. Whatever apologies or explanations it contained belonged to his daughter alone. Instead, he made tea, sat with Rachel on the back porch, watched the stars appear one by one. Tomorrow they'd fly to Rome, begin an adventure he couldn't quite imagine. But tonight was for stillness, for gratitude, for the quiet joy of a life rebuilt. "Penny for your thoughts," Rachel said. "Just thinking about roads," Adrian replied. "How you can't see where they lead when you start, how the detours sometimes take you exactly where you need to be." "Very philosophical, Mr. Miller." "Must be the wedding. Makes a man contemplative." Rachel laughed, the sound bright in the darkness. "Well, contemplate this. In 36 hours we'll be drinking wine in Rome, arguing about whether to see the Colosseum or the Vatican first." "Both," Adrian said. "We'll see both, and everything else we can fit in." Because that was the lesson, wasn't it? That life was short and precious and unpredictable. That love could die and be reborn in different forms. That trust, once shattered, could be rebuilt stronger at the broken places. The Mustang sat in the garage waiting for their return, for the drives they'd take along the lake, for the car shows where old men would nod approval at his restoration work. It had taken him 3 years to rebuild that car, 3 years to rebuild himself. Both journeys had been worth every difficult moment. "I love you," he told Rachel, the words still new enough to carry weight. "I love you too," she replied, simple as breathing. And in that moment, sitting on his porch with tea cooling between them and stars wheeling overhead, Adrian Miller knew a peace that surpassed understanding. Not the false peace of ignorance or the brittle peace of denial, but the deep peace of someone who'd been broken and chosen wholeness, who'd been betrayed and chosen trust, who'd lost everything and discovered what truly mattered. The road ahead stretched long and uncertain. There would be challenges, disappointments, moments when the old wounds ached. But there would also be laughter, discovery, the daily choice to build something worth keeping. Adrian raised his cup to the night sky, a silent toast to all of it, the pain that had taught him strength, the betrayal that had taught him discernment, the love that had taught him resilience. Tomorrow, new roads. Tonight, this perfect sufficiency. The Mustang waited. Rachel dozed against his shoulder. The stars turned in their ancient patterns, and Adrian Miller, survivor and thriver, father and friend, lover and beloved, smiled into the darkness, ready at last for whatever came next. The dawn would come, as dawns always did. But for now, this moment was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything,